Hello everyone, today we're going to have a quick review of Fist of the North Star, Lost Paradise. This game is based off of the popular 80s anime and manga of the same name, something that was definitely before my time, but I did catch a few episodes of it back in high school. Really the main reason I decided to pick this game up is that it is made by the same studio that does the Yakuza games. And if you actually look at the game's Japanese title, it's pretty clear that this is basically a Yakuza spin-off that happens to use the anime instead of the real world. There is definitely a lot of crossover. They've created a whole city for Kenshiro to explore, and at a glance it definitely looks like some kind of ripoff. It's also worth noting that I just played a Yakuza game the month or two before. It's a series that I've really enjoyed getting my hands in since I discovered Zero. And despite that, I wasn't remotely sick of this formula while I was playing through Lost Paradise. This is mostly because a lot of care was taken to change things up. There are still a lot of mini-games, there's still lots of fighting as you run around town. But these mini-games are generally completely new or otherwise very significantly changed from their previous appearances. The Hostess Club is probably the most obvious parallel, but it plays very differently in this version. Come on Sega, when are you going to just make a phone version of this? I'd play it. But the combat system is really what matters here. While it's true that at least one enemy type in this game reuses some animations from the Yakuza games, combat doesn't necessarily feel completely recycled here. Kenshiro's moveset is pretty different from Kiryu's in a lot of ways, and the heat actions that are a staple of Yakuza aren't exactly here. While you do have secret techniques that can easily dispatch foes, they don't really serve the same purpose, and if you're good enough at the combat, you can bypass the animations completely. It's generally a faster game than Yakuza, and in some ways it is more suited towards the idea of fighting giant groups of people, although the one-on-one boss battles aren't bad either. One area where they tried to change things up significantly is in the buggy. You can leave the City of Eden using a buggy that lets you go around and harvest materials, go to other settlements, and participate in races. I think a lot of players are going to assume that this element of the game is fairly half-baked, and despite some very in-depth customization options, I think you would be right. Sega probably knew this because I'd say about 50% of the map is completely unused during the game's storyline. To have entire areas unexplored is really uncommon in these games, so I think they must have known something about it didn't quite work. Still, it's not terrible, the controls work, things aren't too far apart, but I would have liked to see this become a more active element of the game, or at the very least for them to try using the entire map over the course of the story. Speaking of the story, it's not bad. I'm not really an expert in Fist of the North Star, but for anyone who is, you should know that this is sort of an original story. I guess it's closer to a reimagining. Kenshiro spends a lot of time in the city, but you will fight a lot of familiar faces. And while these do provide fun, exciting boss fights, they kind of feel like padding. I understand the point of bringing in some of the iconic enemies that he's faced, but several of these don't really connect to the storyline very well, and I think they could have. But the original characters and conflicts that they've brought in aren't bad. Again, I'm saying this as someone who's a bit of an outsider, but it works for what they were trying to do. I do think they could have gone a little more over the top to match some of the stuff I've seen in the show, but the Yakuza series plays its main storyline very seriously, so maybe they just wanted to do that here as well. Also, props on Sega for giving this a dub. I'm not exaggerating when I say that listening to these horrible 80s thugs beg to their lives before they violently explode filled me with some pretty sick entertainment. Overall, I would put this game as a solid buy if you're into these sorts of games. Yakuza fans should feel right at home, and if you're not, then I would say wait because it's not exactly worth $60. Still, it's probably the best anime game to come out in many years. I suppose not counting Dragon Ball FighterZ, at least. I find it interesting that Sega decided to make a game like this, and I think it shows that the Yakuza formula can apply to other things. Maybe with a bit more of a budget and creativity, they can make something really interesting if they do another spin-off. But this is a pretty solid first attempt. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. And thanks to everyone who responded to the Icons video I did last week. I'm really surprised at how much feedback I've gotten. So thanks. It's honestly pretty inspiring. Anyways, I'll see you next time. I'm hoping to get another quick review out in a few weeks.